Hey guys, welcome to Code Decode. For today's mock interview, we have Vamsi with us. He is having 3+ years of experience. So let's get started with his interview. Also, if you want to be the part of this interview series, just add your details in the Google form, whose link is given in the description below. So now let's get started. Hi Vamsi, how are you?
Hi, ma'am. I am very good. Thank you.
Thank you so much for connecting and sharing your knowledge to the committee. Can we get started with the mock now?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So I'll start with a very simple basic one. So I think I can see Java 8 in your resume. Any clue what are the new features that were added in Java 8 which were not there previously?
Some of the features introduced in Java 8 related to functional interfaces, and mostly Java 8 they have introduced for functional programming. Before Java 8, there was no concept of functional programming in Java, and also Lambda expressions, default and static methods in interfaces, predefined interfaces like predicate, function, consumer, and method reference and constructor reference. In case of Lambda expressions, we can also use method reference and stream API, date and time API, and optional class.
Okay. And any reason why functional interface was introduced? Because I know that Java was pure object oriented, almost object oriented language, not completely pure object oriented. But then why functional interface introduced? Any clue why they have done that?
Functional programming was introduced such that we can pass a function as an argument to a method, and also functional interface was introduced such that we can have only one abstract method in the interface. We can make an interface as functional interface by forcing we can use at functional interface annotation about the interface, and we can have only one particular abstract method inside the interface.
Awesome. Okay. Sounds good to me. Also, why Java is not purely object-oriented language?
So we have primitive data types like int, short, byte. So using those data types, we can't say that Java is a complete object-oriented language.
Okay. And how do you come across what classes are around those particular primitives which make them object-oriented?
We can use a concept of wrapper classes, so which can convert the primitive types into object oriented. For example, if it is int, you can convert into integer wrapper class.
And why were these wrappers introduced? Why do you want to convert these primitives to objects? Any reason, specific reason why?
For example, if you are using any collection data structure, you are using list of integer instead of list of int. So in that case, we need to use wrapper classes.
Perfect, sounds great. Okay. Any knowledge about the internal working of hashmap? Any changes that were done in Java 8 with the hashmap changes?
Yeah. For example, you are adding values key and value into the map. Okay. For example, after some threshold value, the linked list will be converted into tree.
Nice. And why was that done?
In order to get the value from the map, we know that the complexity, time complexity to get the value from the map will be big O of 1. But when we are iterating through the entire linked list, it could be big O of 1. So when we convert the linked list to tree, the time complexity will be reduced.
And how?
This could be the reason.
How will it be? Okay. And what will be the worst time complexity with this tree?
Maximum it could be big O of log n. I'm not sure completely.
Yes, that's true. It can be the worst complexity will change from order of n to order of log n. So that was a performance in
log n.
Perfect. So yes, that was done as a performance improvement with Java 8. Correct. Then any clue what changes were done with Java 8 in garbage collection? With any heap area, memory area, any changes that were done?
In case of garbage collection, they have come up instead of there is one particular concept of permgen. So I think they have come up with the new concept of permgen in Java 8.
So initially it was using something called as metaspace.
Metaspace, yeah, from Metaspace they have come up with the new concept of permgen.
And any clue what changes were done there?
All the static members and the class definitions, like all the metadata, will be stored in the permgen.
Okay. Okay. Why was default methods introduced in interface with Java 8?
So default method, if I talk about, mainly it came into picture for solving the limitations of interfaces, for adding more functionality to the methods in interface without breaking the implementation of classes. For example, I have a class called book, and also I have a book interface, and this booking interface is being implemented by two other classes called fictional books and also forest books. In fictional books I want a separate method, and in forest books I want a separate method, but I want these two classes to be implemented by one particular interface. In such case, I want a particular interface. In that particular interface, I am writing some methods, and I don't want all the methods to be implemented by both the classes. Right? In such case, I'll make that method as default in the interface, and I'll write some logic inside that particular method. And whatever class I want to override that particular method, in that class I'll override it, such that no other classes which is not requiring that particular method will not override it.
Okay. So if I want, I can change its implementation in my own class. Can I?
Yes, you can override the implementation in the required class.
Okay. Okay, sounds good to me. There are multiple type of inheritances, right? So which inheritance is not allowed in Java?
Multiple inheritance is not allowed in Java.
Okay. And anyway, Java try to implement multiple inheritance?
Using classes, you cannot use multiple inheritance, but using interfaces, you can use the concept or implement the concept of inheritance, multiple inheritance.
So how
you can't extend two or more.
Please go ahead.
Yeah. You can't extend one or more classes, but you can implement two or more interfaces.
Okay. But then, how it doesn't affect with interfaces? I mean, why are you able to do multiple inheritance with interfaces while you are not able to do it with classes? Why?
There could be same method inside the classes, but there couldn't be same method inside the interfaces. Maybe that could be the reason.
Okay, so you want to say that interfaces do not have implementations, classes have. So if my same method, say
same method will be in the same classes.
So that is why, since there is no implementation
within the different classes.
Okay. But then
it can't call the respective method.
But then with default methods, you have the implementation now.
Correct. We have the implementation.
This problem is called as diamond problem. So do you know about this diamond problem?
I heard it, but not sure clearly.
No problem. I'll help you with this. So diamond problem is when two classes have the same implementation, and when you are extending it, you are confused to take the implementation from whom. For example, I have an animal class who has a method eat. I have an fish class whose method is eat and it just drinks water. Two implementations, different implementations. Now if I extend both animal and fish, you are confused, I want to eat or I want to just drink water. So this is the diamond problem. That is the reason classes do not have it. But initially before Java 8, there was no interface as implementation. So whatever method you take, it will give its own implementation. But with Java 8, now they have default methods. So I can have interface 1 and interface 2. Both can have method eat and drink. Now if you extend interface I1, implement interface I1 and implement interface I2, you have two methods, eat and drink. How will you decide from which interface to take? This problem again arises with Java 8. Any clue how now this is solved?
You have interfaces, and inside interfaces you have two different methods. One is eat
Default
and drink.
methods.
In both the, you are overriding, for example. hmm,
So I'll give you one simpler example. I have an animal. I have a method legs. So animal will have a
okay.
default implementation. I have 4 legs, and then I'll have
Hmm.
a interface as human. I'll have a default methods legs, and it will implement. I
Hmm.
have 2 legs. Now I have
Okay.
a particular class, say mammals. I'll implement both animal and human. Both are mammals. Now
Hmm.
I'm
Hmm.
like implementing the. I'm taking it from the parent, the number of legs method. I have confusion. It should
Hmm.
have 4 legs or it should have 2 legs. So
Two
how
legs.
will I decide? I have to take my legs. The mammals have to take its legs from animal or from the human.
Hmm. It is not having any input, right? So
Default has
if it is
inputs.
having any,
Default methods have implementations in
yeah,
interface, no?
yeah, based on the input you can pass, you can get the implementation.
No, no. So I have my class mammals. It implements I1, comma I2. Now it will give you an
Okay.
and then by default you will over extend everything and whatever you have as a default method in your particular
Hmm.
class. Now you will have a
Okay.
problem. So how will you fix
Yeah,
this
we have
issue?
the problem. Yeah, implementing both. I
Hmm,
have heard about it, but
I'll give you one
not
hint.
able to recall right now.
This was a
Okay.
change only done with Java 8. What they have done is they have used a super keyword. So super dot interface name dot number of legs. So you can say that this interface dot super dot 4 legs. So 4 legs will come from animal. That's how you can do it. A super keyword.
Oh,
Just have a look and you will
okay,
find it
got
that
it.
a super keyword, the interface
Yeah.
name, and you will be good to go. So that was a
Okay,
change that was done with Java 8. So that
got
is
it.
done. Now, any clue why optional was introduced with Java 8?
Optional was introduced in order to avoid null pointer exceptions.
Okay.
There are different types of methods which was introduced in optional. For example, optional.empty, optional.off, and optional.off nullable. Mainly optional.empty. This method returns an empty optional object and indicating that it doesn't contain any value. And also it is mainly often used to initialize any optional object whenever, like, it should be empty. And coming to optional.off, this method creates an optional object and that contains a non-null value, and it basically throws null pointer exception if the provided value is null. And in case of optional dot off nullable, this method basically creates optional object and that contains a value and which can also be null. Yeah, these methods we are using as of in
And
optional.
how do you check? So in the if condition, you will pass that particular if that is null rather than checking the null pointer. So can I directly do say optional O equals to something of optional and you have created your optional object and now you're checking O equals to null. Is that a right implementation?
We can check optional dot empty, so we can use optional dot is empty or if present. So using those methods we can check
Yeah. So basically you should not check the optional with null directly because it will just you can
null
check it with
directly.
null and perfect. Sounds great.
Null.
Uh, I'll I'll move to microservices as it is also written in your resume. Are you comfortable with it?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm comfortable.
Perfect. So I'll give you one small example. I have my microservice application. There are suppose 10 microservice
Okay.
application and one transaction spans across all 10 microservices. Like I'll give you one very simple example of like Swiggy or Zomato, any food delivery application. So what
Okay.
you do is you select something, you put it in your cart, you place the
Yeah.
order, you do the payment, delivery partner
Mm.
is assigned, and order reaches to you.
Yeah.
What if the
Yeah.
payment fails in between? You have to roll back all. You have to cancel the order, right?
We need to roll back. Yeah.
Mhm. So this transaction you can see is not in one particular application. It is across the whole microservices. So what kind of distributed transactions you can handle? How can you handle this particular distributed transactions in microservices?
There is a concept called event-driven architecture.
Okay.
Or inside the event-driven architecture, there is a pattern called Saga design pattern, which solves this particular transaction distributed transaction problem. So here we are taking, for example, Swiggy or any food delivery app where we are sending different types of microservices where we are having order, payments, delivery, etc. So once we have selected any service or any dish, so we'll be adding into the cart. So once we have added it to cart, it should send an event or trigger an event. So such that based on this triggering event, the other microservice triggers. Okay, and so you have done order. You have added into the cart. You have done order, which is in the order microservice, and this is also success. When it is success, it will trigger an event, and it will have the payment. So now once the payment is down or something happened, you got an exception and the payment is failed or cancelled. So then it will trigger an event such that it will be moved to the, it will trigger such that the transaction will be rolled back.
Okay. And what is this communication mechanism you will have between multiple microservices? Like, how many types of Saga design patterns you have?
There are two types of Saga design pattern. One is the choreography design pattern. One is the orchestration design pattern. So in case of
I was asking how
so
you use them.
I would like to go with I'd like to go with the orchestration design pattern because we have a centralized controller such that the Saga participants in this case is like all the microservices what the local transactions will be having to execute, and also the Saga orchestration handles all the transactions, and also it tells all the microservices which operation to perform based on the events it produced. So based on the success and the failure events here.
Agreed. So you were saying that one person is going to handle all the success and failure events and trigger accordingly.
Yes.
Any disadvantages
but this is not the case in choreography.
Okay.
Yeah, in orchestration design, Saga design pattern, additionally we require all the complexity, like design complexity will be very high in case of orchestration, and also any additional point of failure, if there is any additional point, the orchestration should manage the entire complete flow. There could be these disadvantages orchestration Saga design pattern will have.
Okay, so what I can understand from this is that orchestration design, in an orchestration design pattern, apart from 10 microservices, you need 11th piece of code who will act as an orchestrator and manage all those, right?
Yeah.
Now with single point of failure, you want to say that particular piece of code, if it fails, everybody will be clueless.
Yeah.
What to do next?
Yes, correct. Yes.
Okay, I understood your point. So yes, this is a design complexity and additional thing to be added. So we can use rather, if there is a very simple application, we can rather use choreography.
Choreography.
So, what's there in choreography?
So basically in choreography design pattern, like it is a coordinate sagas, like where participants exchange events without any centralized point of control. We don't have any control. And with choreography, each microservices run its own local transaction, and once the transaction is ready, and it publish events to message broker, whether it could be Kafka or any RabbitMQ, and then it trigger local transaction in other microservices. So basically the advantages could be it is simple workflow. You don't have any other microservice requirement or any other code requirement. Basically we push our messages to the broker system, and then it triggers based on that particular message, triggers the other microservices.
Understood. Sounds great. This is so basically there is one addition of messaging broker in between. That's it.
Broker system, yes.
But there is one small disadvantage also. it's good to have it for a small application. That's nice. But what is the disadvantages of this particular choreography design pattern?
If there are many microservices and the workflow becomes very confusing, right? So when you're adding a new steps, it's difficult for all the microservices to understand the different commands given by the particular broker. And also you can have a cyclic dependency between the microservices which they consume all the commands. Like if I want to understand the event, a particular event, if I'm listening the other event, I may not work properly. This could be one of the reason. This particular choreography design pattern will fail there. If you are having many
Sounds
microservices, I recommend, like, if there are less microservices, better to go with choreography design pattern.
good. Okay, got your point. This was a transaction that is being spanned across multiple microservices. Now, if you have one single application, how do you manage transaction inside that standalone microservice?
Okay. For example, if you are having two tables inside one particular microservice, and after one transaction you are adding into the second table, you got some exception and you want to roll back the transaction which is happened in the first table as well. Over the method level, you can have annotation called a transactional. Based on this annotation, automatically the transaction will be rolled back from your database tables.
Perfect. Sounds great. So that was any clue about the propagation levels and isolation levels you can have with multiple transactions being spanned as a child transaction? It's too much to ask for 3 years.
There
I
are
know
some
that.
isolation dot read, isolation dot write. There are some propagation levels, but not sure how it internally works.
No problem. Now, suppose I have 10 microservices and I have to hit these microservices from front end. So how will you manage these 10 URLs who can dynamically change continuously? So you will give this headache to front end guy, or you will try to resolve it as a back end person on your own at the back end?
This shouldn't be given to front end guy. This should be handled only in the backend. So one thing is related to, once we get the request, directly we will not hit to the particular microservice. It will be routed to a load balancer, and the load balancer will route to that particular microservice. So all the related URLs will be storing in the service discovery. So service discovery will store all the particular URLs, and based on that particular URLs, it will be routed to that particular microservice.
I got confused. Okay, can you tell me what is load balancer? What does it do?
Load balancer is nothing but based on the load, it particularly routes to particular instance.
Okay. Of the same microservice.
Of the same microservice.
So that is load
Basically, once we get the request from the UI, it will be moved to API gateway, and API gateway routes to a particular microservice.
Correct. So it should be API gateway, not the load balancer.
Not the load balancer.
So the routing thing has to be done with the API gateway, and service
API
registry and
gateway.
load balancer can route it to particular instance of that particular microservice. Perfect. Sounds good. Okay.
Yeah.
And how have you done logging in your application? Any logging framework you used? How did you do that?
In case of logging, we can, since it is a distributed microservices, we have used Zipkin and Sleuth in order to have centralized logging mechanism.
Okay, that is okay.
So there are
have
some
a trace ID
dependencies. Yes, based on the trace ID, and we have added different types of dependencies for that. Based on that trace ID, we can understand to which microservice the flow is going.
So there's two things: trace ID and span ID. What is the difference between those?
Span ID.
What's the difference? What remains the same across all microservices, and what changes with each microservice?
Span ID will be same. Trace ID will be changed.
Okay. Sure?
Yeah, sure.
Now my application is in production or any particular environment. Where do you see all these logs?
Okay. In the current project, I am seeing in Kibana and also observing all the metrics in Prometheus and Grafana. So in Kibana, based on the timestamp, you can filter it out. Or I want to see all the error messages, so I can filter it using log.error. So such that based on the time and based on the filtering, you can see all the logs of a particular microservice.
So that's the GUI for monitoring.
Monitoring, yes.
Any alerting system you have integrated with it, that as soon as the production error is coming continuously, that the system is low on memory, or continuously the exception is coming 401, 401. How do you alert yourself?
In AWS CloudWatch, we have integrated with the CloudWatch alarms. So inside that particular alarm, we have configured some properties. So based on that properties, if any API is failing, we'll get a notification to a particular admin email. So based on that, we'll react accordingly.
Perfect. Okay. And how do you log in your source code? How do you make sure that your logs that you're logging in your source code reaches to Kibana?
So we are using a framework called log4j or SL4j. We need to write SL4j annotation and also that particular dependency in form.xml. And you need to write log.info, log.one or log.debug. So based on these particular logging statements, it will reach to the Kibana.
How is Kibana integrated to your particular application? I mean, how do you make sure that yes, logs you are writing in your source code reaches Kibana?
All the logs will be moved to Elasticsearch, and from Elasticsearch, there is a concept of FluentD. From FluentD, it will be moved to Kibana. Okay. This is the flow happening.
Okay. And where do you keep your? So suppose I have 10 microservices. I have many properties which are common. So how do you place all these common properties? Do you replicate it in all the 10 microservices, or do you keep it safely at some place and refer it from there?
Basically, we store it in a Git repo or a local repo, which is called Spring Cloud Config Server. So we need to add one dependency called Spring Cloud Config Server, and also one annotation called @enable config server. Inside the application.properties, we maintain all this, and like we need to write spring.cloud.config server and mention the URL of that particular cloud base, like whether it could be Git or GitLab, anything.
Okay. And
from
then
that,
you
it will automatically able to read all the. We need to run that particular server.
And from all your applications will become its client, config client.
Config clients. Inside that particular also, you need to write some annotations.
Okay. And what if I change anything in that Git file? How will it
automatically it will be reflected to all the microservices.
So there must be some hook.
Since it is reading from that particular spring.cloud.config.server, it is fetching the data from that particular file.
Constantly fetching?
So yeah, it constant when we are changing any value, automatically it fetches the value.
Okay, there must be some hook which is created with that GitHub file. That's how.
I'll go through this. I'm not sure.
No, you are almost there. It's almost there. Just have one small look how it constantly dynamically fetches the changed value. Okay. Nice with the mic. I'm good with the microservice part. Have you worked on Git? I can see that in the resume.
Okay. Yeah, I have worked on Git.
Okay. So now suppose I'll give you an example. I am a team with 2 front-end guys, 4 back-end developers, 1 tester, 1 QA, and all of them are working together. So how do you follow your branching techniques, your repository being either they're forked or cloned? What is the environment? What is profiling? What is environments that you're using? Everything I would like to know.
So when I talk about the environments, we have different environments like feature main, dev for developers. Both feature main and develop will be for developers, and QA will be for testers. And we have PO environment, which is for product owners, and the production environment for the customers. So this is about environments. When I talk about the branching strategy, initially the respective developer will start according to the user story. They'll create a private branch and push it to FM. So once everything they have tested in FM, if it is fine, they will push it to or merge the code to dev. So once the dev is also fine, we give the demo to entire team. So once they are satisfied with all the features, automatically we will be triggering a nightly build. So it will be moved to QA.
Okay. So how is your environment type deployment connected with your branches? So it's like as soon as you merge it to your develop branch, the code goes to develop environment. Is that how you're bounding the environment with branching? Or how is the deployment done to particular environment with your branches?
So once it is moved to FM or feature main, we will raise a merge request, and once it is approved, we'll merge it, but the code will not be reflecting in dev. It is a nightly build. So once we have merged, since it is a nightly build, at around 11:30 the build will start, and the changes will be reflected in on the next day.
Okay. Okay. So you are saying that your code will be merged to develop branch, but the deployment is not done before your nightly build. So
Deployment won't be done nightly build. Yeah.
So that nightly build is actually the deployment process from your branch to the environment.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Correct.
Any clue how the deployment is done? Any clue?
So once we have done, it will create a Docker file. Once the Docker file is done, it will create an image. From the image, it will pick all the particular dependencies from a container registry. Okay, all the images will be stored in the container registry, and from the container registry, it will be creating an. We are following Kubernetes as of now, so it will be moved to the Kubernetes instance
of AWS.
of AWS.
So you're using EKS as the
EKS.
EKS you're using.
Yes.
Okay.
Automatically it fetches the file and it will create an instance there.
Okay. So basically you have multiple pods running and interacting with each other.
Multiple pods. Yes.
So okay. So you are aware of Docker and Kubernetes also then.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll have a very simple questions on these. So for the Docker, it is a way to create a containers, and for Kubernetes, it is way for managing it. So I have one application, and second, so basically two microservices. Two microservices, basically two different containers. How do they interact?
Based on the IP address, it should interact.
Okay. So if my container crashes and comes back again, because container is something which crashes again and again. So if it comes back again, a new IP address is assigned. So how will A know that B, which was earlier alive, was crashed, is alive again, is having a dynamic IP? How will it interact now?
Directly, it will not communicate with the container. There is a concept of node. So inside nodes, these particular containers will run.
Okay.
Pods, inside pods. Containers will run, and pods will be under nodes.
Okay. So anything, something called as services, which will be used for interacting two pods?
Yeah, services also will be used. Okay. Yeah, publicly. Okay. In order to communicate, you need to use service.
Perfect. Sounds good. Okay. For the Spring Boot, your application is currently using which framework?
Spring Boot.
Spring Boot, okay.
3.1.7.
Oh, you moved to 3. Nice. You migrated.
Yeah, recently we migrated.
Okay. What changes did you see in Spring Boot 3 compared to the legacy ones?
The latest version of Java we need to use is Java 17. That should be
Okay.
the least version of Java.
Okay.
And since it is using Spring Boot 3, it is using Spring Framework 6. And some of the dependencies they have moved from Jakarta EE version, I mean Java X2 Jakarta EE version. And also they have come up with the concepts of observability and micrometer, and also Spring Cloud Native, basically in order to provide lightweight executable files and such that it could be easily containerized. These are the some of the features I can remember right now.
Okay. And what was Micrometer introduced for?
Micrometer mainly for your management of metrics, or I think mainly for metrics they have introduced Micrometer.
Okay. Okay. What web server are you using for your web applications?
Tomcat, the default web server.
I don't want Tomcat. How will I change it? I want
So
JT.
if you want to change, you want JT. So inside the form.xml, you need to exclude the Tomcat dependency initially and add the JT dependency.
Okay. After excluding, you have to add the dependency. Okay.
Dependency, yeah. First you need to exclude, because this is the default server, right? So you need to exclude that and add the JT dependency.
Okay. Any profiling you have done in your application? Spring profiling?
You'll not have only one particular environment, right? You'll be having dev, QA, prod. So based on each and every environment, you need to take that particular property and execute your application. So for that, you need to mention spring.profiles.active. So inside active, you need to mention which environment it should be, whether it should be dev, QA, or prod. Based on that, it will fetch the particular properties and execute your application.
Okay. So suppose I am working with this particular profiling system in my local. So I'll go to my application.properties, change my spring.profile.active to local and run it in local. How will I do it? So
correct.
How will I do it in dev? How will I do it in QA? How will I do it in prod? Every time I'll go and change it and deploy it. Every time I go change in application.property and deploy it. Is this a feasible solution?
This is not feasible solution. I think the DevOps team, they have the idea of deploying it. I'm not sure as a backend developer they do.
No problem. There must be something, because this is not how it has to be. But no problem. There is a centralized team like DevOps with every now and then with the organizations. They might know it. No problem. That's okay. If you get a chance, just have a word with them and see how they do it. No problem.
Yeah, sure.
Any design patterns that you have used in your code as of now?
I got a chance to work with all the 3 different types of design patterns. One is the creational, structural, and behavioral design pattern. In case of single creational, I got a chance to work on singleton, factory, and abstract factory, as well as builder. And in case of structural, flyweight, facade, and decorator design patterns. And in case of behavioral, got a chance to work with observer, command, iterator, and state design patterns.
Nice. Okay, so can you tell me why you have used singleton?
Singleton, when we talk about, it is for creation. It is one of the creational design pattern. Only one particular instance of the class should be existing. Mainly, we use this particular design pattern in case of logging, or when we want to cache any systems or any data. We use this particular design pattern. When I talk about the implementation, the constructor of that particular class should be private, and method which is returning the instance of the class should be public, and the instance whatever you are creating, that particular instance type should be private and static. There are different types of initialization in this singleton design pattern, which could be eager and lazy. And also for thread safety, there is thread safe method initialization and thread safe block initialization. In case of eager initialization, even there is no particular check, directly return the instance. And in case of lazy initialization, we need to check whether the object is being initialized or not. And then using equal to null condition, you can just check, and then if it is null, then only create the new object. So this is the lazy initialization, and else you can directly return it.
Is this thread safe?
Yeah.
So 2 threads.
No, this is not thread safe. This is not. So this is not thread safe. In order to have thread safety for an entire method, you can use a keyword called synchronized along with the method. Since we are writing public static synchronized and the method name, and inside the method we need to check whether that particular object is equal to null or not. So then since we are making it synchronized, only one particular thread will be accessing the method at once.
Nice. But one problem I can see here is if you make the whole method synchronized, you are losing the performance. So any other way rather than using synchronized?
Since the method is entirely method is being synchronized, performance will be decreasing. So whichever code you think that you need better performance, and multiple threads can cause thread safety, make that particular piece of block as synchronized.
And there's
like synchronized, and inside the synchronized, yeah.
So which line of code will you put into that synchronized?
So this checking of singleton class, singleton equal to double equal to null. So that particular piece of block I'll keep it in synchronized block.
So what you will do is synchronized block. You will check if this equals to equal to null, and then what you will do? You will return new.
No, if it is null, then we need to create the new instance.
Okay, if it is null, you will create new instance. That's how.
New
so
instance.
this is called double check singleton, something like that, right? Double check locking singleton.
Yeah, double check locking. Yes.
So there will be 2 null checks in this particular scenario.
Before the synchronized block, we need to have one more null check.
And why will that be done?
I have gone through, but I'm not able to recall right now.
No problem, it's true. But good job. I'm in the middle of the interview and say good job. Okay. Is the how many types of scopes are there for the bean and Spring?
So there are 4 types of scopes or 5 types of scopes. I think 5.
5.
One is the singleton. Yeah. One is the singleton scope. If I talk about singleton scope, this is the default scope.
Okay.
So this is the default scope. Even if you are not mentioning it, only one particular instance of the bean is being created in the Spring container, and the same instance is written whenever the bean is being requested, and all the subsequent requests for that particular bean will receive the same object reference, since you are calling the same bean again and again. And in case of prototype scope, a new instance of the bean is created each time, and it means the Spring container does not manage the life cycle of the bean, and the developer should be responsible for managing all the resources, and also we should make it clean if it is necessary. And request scope, we have request scope, session scope, and global session scope. So all these are related to HTTP requests. So whenever I call any request scope, a new instance of the bean is created for each HTTP request, and also it is specific to web applications, and each user request receives a separate instance of the bean isolated from the other request. And in case of session scope, a new instance of the bean is created for each user session, and also it is specific to web application, and each user can span multiple HTTP requests. And in case of global session scope, the scope is similar to session scope, but it is specific to portless based web application, and also it represents a global session that can spawn multiple portlets.
Nice. Okay. For the singleton, you said it's a default scope, right?
Yeah, default scope.
So if I have that bean in one particular auto-wide in one particular class, auto-wide in another particular class. Suppose I have a bean for your name, and I'm changing your name
Okay.
from Vamsi to something else. Will that be visible to all the
Okay.
other classes where it is being auto-wired?
Can you repeat?
Okay. I have a class. It has a attribute called as name. I'm setting that particular to Vamshi. Now I'm changing that name to XYZ. So will that bean, which is auto-wired in different classes, can see the effect of this change?
No, since you are making the scope as XYZ, it will be visible to only that particular class.
Scope is singleton. I'm not changing the scope. I'm just changing the property of that class. Say a person is the class.
Okay.
The attribute is name. The name has a value Vamsi.
Okay.
I'm changing Vamsi to XYZ.
Okay.
I'm not changing the scope. Scope I'm going to remain it as default scope. So will the other classes be able to see the change?
You have a class and you have a property name.
And its value is
Vamsi. Okay.
And you are creating a bean out of this. So the class person is a bean which is completely managed by your Spring container. Now I'm auto-wiring in class A and class B. So auto-wire, @auto-wire person and @auto-wire person. Now I'm trying to and creating two instances P1 and P2. Now I'll change P1 dot name from Vamsi to XYZ. So P2 instance will also see the change, or it will be Vamsi only.
Be able to see the change. No, it will be able to see the change.
Because it is
managed by the Spring container.
Oh,
singleton.
Correct. Yes, since it is singleton, it will be visible to all the classes where it is being auto-wired.
The classes auto-wired. Yeah.
Perfect. I have a query about the singleton. And when I was doing the coding in Java, it was like singleton, and then when I'm again coding with Spring, I'm still learning about singleton. So how the singleton in Java, core Java, is different from a singleton in Spring?
You need to write your own logic in case of Spring when you are writing only Java based applications, but in case of Spring, only annotation is sufficient. So automatically Spring configures all the singleton.
So you have to put annotation.
I think at scope you can. No. Automatically Spring manages the singleton scope in Spring Boot based applications. But in case of normal Java, it's the responsibility of developer to manage all this.
Okay. True that. I have a person class in core Java, which you are creating as your own singleton. And I have a person class, which is singleton. And it is automatically defined as singleton by default scope of bean in Spring. How is this person, how this instance of this singleton notion is different in core Java, and is notion is different in Spring? So singleton is one instance per something in Java and one instance per something in Spring. A bit confusing. I'll give you one small hint. Singleton is one instance per Spring container. You said that. So in Spring, singleton means one instance per container. But in Java, it will be one instance per JVM.
Per JVM. Okay. Got it.
That's how it is different. So if I have two different Spring containers, I can have same instance with different things. So that will not be singleton with two different Spring containers.
but we run these applications. We are using Java and as well as Spring. So in this case, how it will be?
It's mostly the same. If you are using a container, your application runs with a Spring container, right? So it will be one per Spring container.
Yeah. Not one per JVM.
No.
Okay, cool.
So even if I have two containers with application context, I can have two Spring containers also. Then I'll have two instances, and that won't be singleton anymore.
Yes.
Okay. So okay, that was all about my Spring Boot questions. I can see the TDDs in your resume. So how do you unit test your code?
Yeah. So once we start any feature, we follow BDD and TDD approaches. So BDD is nothing but behavioral driven development. So product owner, developer, and the tester sits and understand all the scenarios of a particular feature, and we use Cucumber framework to write the BDD files in Gherkin language. So it's nothing but when then we need to write all the three scenarios. All the scenarios using this particular framework, and once all the three persons they have understood all the scenarios, the developer will start writing the test cases. Test cases is like TDD is nothing but test driven development. Initially we'll write all the scenarios using JUnit 5 and Mockito, and initially all the test cases will fail. So the developer will start writing all the logics inside his class. So automatically one by one test case will pass.
Okay. So all the corner cases also you write as a test case. That's how?
Yes.
And with your business logic, they starts getting green.
Getting passed. Yeah.
Perfect. That's testable. Perfect. So you said you use JUnit 5 and Mockito.
Yep.
So what do you mock? What do you inject mock?
All the classes which are required, we'll be mocking them using @mockbean. For example, I'm using any service class, I should mock them, and the data which I'm getting from the repository layer, I'll not be able to get directly from the database, right? I should not hit the database directly. I should not save anything directly to the database when I'm calling the test class. So for that, I need to mock them.
So you will mock your business class also and your repository also. If you are testing your business class, so suppose I have a service class. So
okay.
And then that service class gives a calls to a repository, and that repository gives a database call. And my database is actually in AWS, and each database call will give me a burn in my pocket. I don't want that. So you said right that all the database calls will be mocked. And what about the service class that you are testing?
Service class will not be mocked there.
You will inject
only database. We are injecting the particular class which are required. We'll be injecting them, and only the database calls will be mocking them, because directly we should not hit the database, because these are costly operations.
So you inject mock your business class and you will mock your repository class.
Okay. Repository classes.
Correct. Now, before each of the JUnit that is running, I want to initiate my product with some values. Like product is going to have something like an attributes, the color, the product name, the subcategory, category. How will I create product P equals new product for each and every test test cases, or how can I do it at once?
Inside the test class, there is a method called setup, and there is an annotation called @before. So inside the setup method, you can create the object of product, and once the test class is being run, the product object will be created. So the same object can be used in any test method.
Okay. And have you used before each and before all? What is the difference between before each and before all?
Before calling any test method, this particular method will be called setup method, which is annotated with at before each will be called, and at before all will be called at the start of executing all the methods, all the test class methods.
Okay, so you mean to say at the rate before each is method level, before each method it is called, and at the
Method
rate
level.
before all is class level. Before the class
Level
that particular
only once it is called.
for n number of methods, only once.
N number of methods. Yeah.
Okay, understood. And what is the tear down method have you used it for mocking? For unit testing. Tear down.
Not sure. No.
Just like finalize, you remove all the kachra, all the garbage. So tear down also will remove everything as a tear down. It's just that my method is done. After method is done, you will tear it down. Whatever things you want to. So I want to garbage collect this particular. So I'll make my product p equals to null, so that my memory is not used by my product anymore. Any cleanup thing you can do with the tear down. Any clue what is a test suite?
You heard about it, but didn't use any time.
No problem. Set of all these test cases which can run together becomes a test suite. That's okay.
Okay.
Also, I can see you have worked with solid principles. So, can you give me a real-time example how you are working with solid principles and implementing that in your code?
Solid principles, these are very important concept of while developing any code. So S stands for single responsibility principle. Basically, it states that every class should have only one particular functionality, and implementation of all multiple functionalities in a single class will mash up your code. And in case of open and closed, it states that according to the new requirements, the module should be open for extension but should be closed for the new modification. And in case of list code substitution, it states that according to the class P, for example, there is a parent class and it should be replaceable by the child class, and no business logic should be affected. And in case of interface aggregation principle, all the larger interfaces should be splitted into smaller ones, such that all the concrete classes will use the required methods only. We should not force all the concrete methods to implement all the unnecessary methods. And in case of dependency inversion, basically we have a concept of abstraction, and it states that we should use abstraction concept instead of concrete implementations. We can use abstract classes and interfaces to achieve this particular principle.
That is dependency inversion.
Dependency inversion.
Inversion of dependency. Okay. How have you used the single responsibility principle in your code in real time?
For example, you will be having many classes, right? So we shouldn't have only one particular logic inside one particular class. You need to separate them into different classes and use it.
Perfect. So also I'll get some example. Like suppose I have an entity class. I should not write business logic, repository, everything into that class. Then that is what you are starting with.
Class.
Okay, understood. And anywhere you have used open close principle? Anywhere?
For example, I'm having some logic. For example, I'm building any payment gateway systems in my application. Currently, I'm having credit card and debit card, and I have PayPal. After that, I want to implement any other payment gateway system which was introduced. My code should be such that it should be extended, but it should be having extension, but you shouldn't modify the existing code, existing logic. So what I will do, I'll create an interface, and based on those interfaces, I can extend it.
Okay, so you are saying that you will create an interface called payment methods, and you will create classes as debit card,
payment method,
implementing payment method,
debit card, credit card, and PayPal. Yes, correct.
Perfect. I'm good with that. Also, I can see that you have written JPA in your resume.
Yeah.
And how do you write queries for connecting with the DBs with JPA? And what is JPA?
JPA is nothing but Java Persistence API. Okay, and it is connecting. It is for connecting to the databases. It is similar to one ORM tool, object relation mapping. Okay, so you should connect to the database. Previously, there was a concept of JDBC, and it's the responsibility of developer. There will be lot of boilerplate code you need to manage to connect to the database. So in order to reduce them, they have come up with the concept of Hibernate and JPA. So for connecting to the JPA, you need to add Spring Data JPA dependency, and in application.yml or in application.properties, you need to mention Spring Data JPA and username, password, driver name. So all these you need to mention.
Perfect. Okay. Now I would ask you that there are some inbuilt queries in JPA, and then you can write your own queries. So how do you how many ways you can do that?
For example, there are inbuilt queries like find by ID, okay, find by name. So these are the inbuilt queries. And if you want to write your custom queries, yeah, we can directly use the inbuilt queries. But if you want to use your custom query, in the repository class, you can extend the JPA repository, mention the primary key of the entity, and also you need to mention the entity which you are using. And inside the class, we write a query and convert the SQL query which I have written to JPA query. But if you want to use the same query which you have written in the SQL, you can use named queries or native queries. Inside the query, once you have written the query, comma, you can mention it, a native query equal to true. So these are the three types I have used.
Correct. What are named queries?
I think named queries and native queries are the same.
Okay. I don't think so. Named queries you can no worries.
Named queries we basically we don't write in the repository layer, we write it in the entity layer, I think.
Nice. Yes, you do that.
So we can have multiple named queries as well inside the entity layer.
Perfect. Yes, yeah. True that. Also, you said that you are going to extend a JPA repository and give a primary key of the entity. Okay.
Primary key of the entity, yeah.
Okay. I have a class person. I have an attribute name as Vamsi. I have an attribute ID.
Okay.
So int ID. So you will put it as JPA repository int comma ID comma int. That's how.
No, integer comma person.
Integer comma person. So why not int? Because
I think since we are using object, primitives are not allowed there. Yes. Since we are using object, we need to use integer there.
Yes, primitives are not correct. Now you have an application. Okay, what is happening in your current application is that your DB calls are taking very long. So your overall performance of your production application is getting down. So how will you make this better?
Before understanding the scenario, I'll check the logs to understand which particular method is taking long time.
Okay.
Based on the logs, I'll be understanding which particular query is taking long time.
Perfect.
I'll go to that particular table. I'll understand how much data is available right now.
Okay.
If indexing is required, I need to index the table.
Okay.
And even this is taking time, I need to shard the data, or if it is required to partition the data, I need to do the partitioning as well.
Nice. Okay.
And also, this is apart from the database. If it is required to have if there is multiple operations happening in the business logic, you can use multi-threading concept, and you can submit different tasks to the thread pool. You can use completable future and asynchronous programming, and based on that you can improve the performance of the API.
So basically you will introduce an
executor framework, and we can submit the task to it. Based on it, it can parallelly process your business logic.
Perfect. Sounds great. Okay, you said something about shredding. So can you tell me anything you know about shredding? How do you do it? How many types of shredding is there?
Can you repeat?
Shredding. How do you do the shredding?
So in case of databases, there is a concept of sharding, which is nothing but you will be dividing your data into more than one particular physical databases. Okay. There are basically two types of sharding. Basically, we will be dividing the data into three different databases. One is we have vertical sharding, one is the horizontal sharding. Based on the data, you can divide them.
Okay. And how do you do the partitioning?
So there are different types of partitioning. One is the vertical partitioning. The second thing is the horizontal partitioning. For example, there is a table called employee table, and you have different columns, and I want to partition them. So when you are using based on the columns, like I have 5 columns, and I want to store 3 columns in one table and 2 other columns in another table. So this is basically vertical partitioning. And in case of horizontal partitioning, for example, I have 10,000 records. I want to store 5,000 records in one table, second 5,000 records in another table. This is called as horizontal partitioning.
Perfect. So basically with rows, that's horizontal. With columns, that's vertical. Perfect.
Horizontal. Vertical, yeah.
Okay. And okay, that is also good. Types of mappings in JPA Hibernate, any clue?
So there is one-to-many mapping, one-to-one mapping, many-to-one. Yeah, and I think these are the types.
Many-to-many.
Many-to-many, many-to-one, one-to-one, one-to-many.
Yeah. Okay. And in many-to-many, how many tables are there? If 2 tables I'm mapping with each other, how many tables will be created total in physical database?
I think 3 tables will be created in total.
And third table will have what?
The common records of both the tables.
Common records or the unique memory keys?
Unique records, I mean. Unique memory keys of both the tables. Okay. For example, ID in both the tables.
Oh. Okay, I can see you have used Kafka also.
Yeah. As we are using currently, it is a small microservices pattern we are following. So it's choreography design pattern we are using. So based on the request of based on the event of one microservices, it is pushed to the Kafka, and all the other microservices it subscribes to this particular topic, and it performs its actions. So we are pushing our data to Kafka, and then it subscribes to the other microservices. It subscribes to this particular topic.
Okay, so publish subscribe model. So one publisher, multiple subscribers. That's
yeah.
And
multiple subscribers. Correct.
Yeah. Any clue about the architecture of Kafka?
So basically, when I talk about Kafka, you have partition concept. So you have different types of partition, and inside partition you have different types of. Basically, one is broker, and inside broker you'll be having different types of topics. Inside topics, you'll be having different types of partitions.
Okay.
For example, I have one particular topic. Inside that, I'll be having 4 partitions. First 2 partitions, for example, 2 microservices you have. So 2 microservices will be subscribed to that particular topic, and you have 4 partitions. So first 2 partitions will be assigned to microservice 1, and second 2 partitions will be assigned to microservice 2.
Okay. So we are creating consumer groups out of your consumers.
Consumers group, yeah, correct.
Okay. And this will help you in parallel reading from your topic.
Topic, correct.
Okay. Okay. And how is the fault tolerance done within Kafka? Somewhere you have one leader broker, you have multiple follower brokers. If one follower dies,
We have a concept of zookeeper. Zookeeper basically manages all the topics, and so based on that, it will create a new broker automatically.
out of the follower brokers.
Yeah, out of the four other brokers.
Okay. 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 I think something has to be done with the architecture of Kafka. No problem. No problem.
Okay.
I can see there is also one more thing on Kafka. Any knowledge around how the consumers do acknowledgement and it marks the offset? Any knowledge around that in Kafka?
Not sure completely.
No problem. No problem. No problem. I'll move to another topic, that is security. So, what
Yeah.
kind of token have you used for your security implementation in your project?
I have used JWT. JWT is nothing but JSON Web Token. So once the token is being created, based on the response, I mean, we'll be having also expiry time. So once the expiry time is expired, like of that particular token, again a new token will be generated.
Okay. And what
So
is the
inside the
JWT
JSON, the JWT token consists of three particular parameters. One is the header, the payload, and the signature. If I talk about the header, you'll be having the algorithm which is required. For example, HS256, and the type will be using the JWT. So the type will be JWT, and in case of payload, we'll be having registered claims, which are nothing but like which are not mandatory, but these are recommended to provide. For example, which are set of usable and interoperable claims. Okay, and for example, you will be having issuer, expire time, and what is the subject, and who are all the audience, like AUD. All these things will be mentioned in the, like there are two claims. One is the public claims. The second one is the private claims. So in the public claims, you'll be having all the defined will all these will be defined by using the JWT to avoid all the collisions basically. And in the private claims, these are all the custom claims to create the shared information. And in case of signature, it's nothing but to create the signature, you have to take the encoded header. The encoded header have a payload and a secret message and the algorithm, like which is the algorithm. So based on this, the JWT token, the JWT will be able to generate the signature. So based on the signature, and we'll be encoding them in the application, and based on the username and the password we get, we'll be checking whether the token is valid or not.
So,
And the JWT token, basically we are using a particular topic called Okta. So using Okta, we'll be generating the JWT token.
So Okta becomes your authorization server.
Authorization server.
Okay, it will provide you JWT tokens. Now I am allowed to add anything in your claims. So can I add my password in the claim? In the body?
It is a you can have custom values as well, but I am not sure whether you can have password inside the claims.
Okay. Okay. And how do you handle the course issue? Have you faced the course issue, CORS, cross origin resource sharing issue, in your application while connecting front end to backend? And how do you resolve it?
So backend will be running in one particular server and front end will be running in another server. So in order to manage them, we need to have one particular annotation called at course. You need to add that particular annotation inside the application which you want to integrate with the front end.
Okay.
So CORS is nothing but coarse origin resource sharing. So you need to share your resource from the backend to the front end. So in order to resolve this particular error, you need to add that particular dependency called at coarse.
And where do you add this particular annotation?
Inside the application where you are writing at Spring Boot application, we can add at coarse there.
Okay. How about the filter where all the HTTP request comes and goes?
I'm not clear with your question.
Okay. So
If your question be more clear, I'll be able to.
okay, no problem. So from front end, your request is coming to back end. So there is one filter,
correct.
security filter, which is before the backend, a layer just before the backend. So all the requests will intercept with this particular filter. So why not add the course at this filter?
You can mention star as well in the course, or you want to filter some of the APIs or some of the URL based on that particular URL you want to filter. Inside the course, you can mention the URL there.
Okay, fine. Sounds good.
If it is a local development, we mention it as star. But if it is a production-based application, we need to mention the filters.
Okay, and where do you mention that all the requests coming for h.html, just pass it, and all the request which is coming for my so I just want to have few requests completely passing out, and few post requests to be properly tested for authentication authorization. So where is that logic written?
You can have a separate class. Inside the class, you can write your own logic.
And how that class will intercept each and every HTTP request?
You need to have enable web security, and based on web security, you'll be extending web security adapter, and inside that, you can have HTTP security method, and inside that you can write your own logic.
Perfect. So basically, with extending your web security configuration adapter, you can configure an interceptor. Perfect. Sounds great. I think I am good with this. Last thing, maybe you know or not, any knowledge about configuration, continuous integration, continuous deployment, CI/CD? Have you worked upon it?
So yeah, I didn't work on it. Like I have the working experience. Like once the code is built using your Maven in local, we'll push it to Git, and automatically once it is pushed, we have CI pipeline, which is nothing but continuous integration. We'll be having different stages. One is the unit test stage, integration test stage, sonar, and code coverage. So all these 4 stages will be passed, and depends upon the project, these stages will be different. Okay, so once all the 4 stages passed, you'll be creating a merge request to that particular environment you want to push. So then the next CD pipeline will start. So again, the 4 stages will be common: integration test, unit test case, sonar, code coverage, and then publish and then deploy.
Okay. And you deploy using any particular deployment tool?
In the previous project, I got a chance to work on Jenkins, and currently we are using GitLab. So no third-party tool as of now.
Jenkins is for continuous integration?
I think we have used Jenkins for both CI and CD.
Okay. So I think I'm gonna stop this interview here. I am good with this particular part. Yes. So I'll start with my feedback now. I have not. I interviewed such a great person for 3 years of experience. Even these many questions were not being answered by 5-7 years of experience also. So such a great interview, man. I mean, heads off.
Thank you.
I think 95-96% questions you were able to answer perfectly fine. Only thing I can see is a problematic thing is Kafka architecture. There, the Kafka architecture is a lot. I mean, it has too many things into it. The acknowledgement is there, lagging is there. If partitions are having lags, how will you face it? How will you handle it? So Kafka has a lot of things into it. So you can just have a look like how the architecture works, because zookeeper is also there who handles the leaders, brokers. The only thing I can find in the whole interview which is problematic is Kafka. Apart from that,
Okay.
for 3 years of experience, you were good. You were perfect. So very nice interview. Also I covered everything. So one thing you need to have a look at is diamond problem for Java 8. That was one thing I want
Yeah.
to remind you about.
Okay.
And
Okay.
what all I have written. So I was just taking down notes where you have to, a test suit, you might have to look at it once. I think that is it. That is all the feedback I can give you. Only 2-3 points here and there, and you were perfectly fine. So thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with the community, man. I would say go ahead with all your interviews. You're good to go. You don't need a mock at all. You are completely ready for the companies. Go ahead, have fun.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you so
for the
much for
interview.
connecting. Thank you so much, Vamsi, for taking your time out and helping the community by sharing your knowledge with all of us. This was such an awesome interview. Also, if you guys want to be the part of this interview series, just add your details in the Google form below and we will give you a call as soon as possible. Thank you so much again and have a nice day. We will be meeting next in the another mock interview. Thank you.